was a disaster. I didn't get enough subscribers. I need to get more views and I need to get more subscribers. I gotta beat Logan Paul. I mean, my name's Aaron Paul. Logan Paul's going down. PewDiePie, this is Fleming Pie. I gotta have more subscribers. What do you think we can do?
I think you have to look better.
Me look better? Is that possible?
Yeah, of course it is.
Okay, well,
It'll make you look better.
do your magic, do your magic.
Okay?
Yeah, do your magic, guys.
Brush your teeth first.
Oh, brushing your teeth, that's a good idea.
Brushing your hair.
Oh, brushing my hair. I thought I just had to put that thing on. Okay. Yeah, that should be good. That's got the purse thing up there, I think. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, what else?
Teeth are all right.
What else do you think?
This will do. This will do too.
Oh, yes. Oh, that feels a bit better. Okay. Yeah, yeah. We'll get the stuff off the shoulders there. Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Thanks. Yeah. Oh, okay, good. Is that looking good?
Yep.
I'm okay?
Fantastic.
Okay, good. High five, thanks.
Very good.
Good. Whoa. Yeah. Let's do this. Let's get this videos done. Hello there. So what we're going to do today is start the new unit. And so that will be this CSP Unit 5 Building Apps 1920 from code.org. And so I'm going to make sure that I assign that to the section. So you should be able to find that pretty easily there. And the idea is this builds us, takes us through building an app, as it says, and using JavaScript. And so a lot of this will be review, although the idea of coding in sort of a different environment with a different language will be new. But, the basic ideas will be sort of review here. So it should be a good opportunity to recall what we did, I guess, back in the fall, really, when we learned all about coding, the fall and the winter, and see how all the similarities that exist between languages. Now, having said that, there is a bit of a difference here. So I'm just going to go through some terms that are a little bit different than what we experienced in C. In C, we just sort of worked in the console. What you'll notice is that we're going to be working in more of an interactive environment. We're going to be able to have graphics. You're going to be able to have buttons, things like that, things that we're sort of a bit more used to. And so this brings us to this whole concept of event-driven programming. So no longer are we going to be sort of just, the program sort of running through and maybe we type a couple little commands on the keyboard. You're actually going to be able to get it to be interactive, which is a little bit more interesting. So what is an event? Well, an event really is an action that the user does, right, that causes something to happen. So the simplest one that I just talked about, it was clicking on a button, okay? So the act of that's the event, okay, the on click, and then that will cause some code to run. So that's what basically an event-driven program is. It runs blocks of code in response to a specific event initiated by the user. And so the difference here, again, we just ran the program before, it sort of went, step by step pretty well through the code when we did it in C. This time it's going to be dependent upon what does the user do, clicking. I mean, there might be blocks of code that never get run if the player never, or the user never clicks on it, okay? So we've got a few, different terminologies here, event handling, okay, event listener, and this callback, okay? And they'll make more sense as we go through, so don't worry if this doesn't seem, doesn't make as much sense as you're hoping, because once we get programming, you'll see it. The event handling, like it says, there's the coding task involved in making the program respond to an event. So you even have something called the event handler, right? It deals with whatever event that has gone on, okay? Event listener, okay, so it says set up a trigger to run a function when an event occurs. So the mouse click on the event. So in a way, the program's always waiting, listening for what it should be doing, and then when that event happens, right, it's going to deal with it. A callback function, like it says, a function specified as part of the event listener. So we know what a function is. Function sort of runs a group of like code, basically, but if somebody does something, it gets called, right? It gets activated. There's an event. Then there might be a function that gets run because of that. Okay, a couple other little things there, user interface and UI elements. So UI, right, user interface, we've talked about that before. Typically, GUIs, right? That's what we're used to, graphical user interfaces. We talked about this before a little bit, but GUIs are really the on-screen objects like buttons, text boxes, and so on that the user can interact with. UI, obviously, you could have like we saw, a console-based, a text-based UI, and so on. Typically, right, and what we're going to be using here in the JavaScript is a GUI, okay? Which, like I said, makes it a bit more fun. And those UI elements, right, those are the things that we're going to be able to add, and you'll see how that interface works in a couple minutes here. But buttons, input boxes, menus, and so on. Okay, so modern apps, like it says there, are interactive because, right, they can respond to user input. So anytime you tap on your screen, click on it with your mouse, and so on, the program's basically responding to you. Okay, so some of these action reactions that are very common, right? Click on a button, something happens, right? Hover over a menu, maybe the drop-down menu exposes or that changes color or something. More with a touch UI, right? Swiping with your finger. I mean, 2 finger, 3 fingers, right? There's all these different things. I know the pinch and zoom sort of idea. Those are all UI, graphical sort of UI elements that we are usually using. It says there that apps that have elements that you interact with, and the program that responds to it in that predetermined manner is called event-driven programming, right? So you are sort of causing the event and the program responds to it. You're going to sort of work through these things because one thing that says design mode, okay? This is when you're sort of working to lay out your menu, okay, or lay out your app in a way. And the on event, that's where we're sort of going to do the programming there. Okay, so the program, I mean, we get the fundamentals in sort of 5.1, and then we'll talk a little bit, I'll talk a little bit about 5.2 today as well, and then that will be sort of using multiple screens, and a little bit more about debugging. But let's just go ahead and take a look at what we're going to be dealing with here. So we'll go back to this, go to units, and so it's quite a number of units, and basically we're just going to work through this, okay? If you just sort of scroll down, there's quite a few lessons. It looks a bit ominous, but these are really, really quick things too. Of course, there's the videos there that you might want to watch, right? And it leads you sort of step by step. Having said that, these aren't always the, you can do it wrong and still get it right. So make sure if you're really sort of confused about it that you talk to me, you ask me. I can make a little video, I can just chat with you, whatever it is, and to get you through this. But yeah, let me just sort of pop into here. Let me just find introduction to design mode, right? That's what I was just talking about, and just sort of show you what's going on. And hopefully it pops up. Okay, so this is just going through all the explanations. So I give it a little cursory glance, but you'll sort of figure things out as you go. So just to give you the idea, right? These are going to be the things. It's going to ask you to do something. Obviously, it's explaining to me some very basic things. Okay, so it says add a large red button. Okay, to your design. So go into design mode. Basically, this is the coding. Okay, so it's kind of a mix between drag and drop. You can drag things in. Obviously, you can type them in as well. So this is the sort of the text version, but you can show blocks as well. Personally, I like the text version better, but the nice thing is you can drag those code blocks in, so you don't have to type them all out. There's benefits to typing it out, I'll say that right away, because the more you type it out, the more it becomes sort of like that muscle memory, you really understand it. Unfortunately, dragging them in sometimes, prevents you from having those little syntax errors. It's just like anything, you don't really get the sort of the repetition, the get your brain working on it to make it sort of sink in a bit better. So yeah, I would suggest typing it in a few times as well to help you out. Anyways, let's go to the design mode. Like it says here, switch to design mode, drag a button onto the screen, change the text, click me, and make it red. Okay, so let's go over here. So this is the design mode, and if you've done any sort of maybe web design kind of thing using Wix or something like that, very similar. You click on the element, okay, and then you just simply drag it in. Now, one thing you'll notice is it gives you the coordinates. X, Y, 2D, makes sense. One thing that maybe doesn't make sense is the top left, and you can see there where I positioned it, is 0, 0, okay? And then so you can move it around. I don't think there's an automatic center, so you'd have to sort of, figure it out. Let me just go down into here. Yeah, I don't think there's oh yeah, there is, well, that's text alignment, sorry. I don't think there's a center on that, so you'd have to be a little bit careful about those. But button ID, they have an ID that you'll access it. The text is different, so this is where it said click me. Pretty straightforward. The size, obviously, if you went over, you might have to change the width and the height. Notice those are all in pixels there, and that position too is in pixels. So like I said, right in that top left is 0, 0, okay? And then you can sort of see we've got about 320 across, and I forget what it is down, 450, I guess, at the bottom, right? So you got that screen space to deal with. So we do, I know I clicked on something there. Background color. I'm a little worried that I got off this. Okay, there we go. Click me, that's better. Text color, so we'll leave that. Background color. So again, you can use the hexadecimal color codes if you want, or I think on here, easiest way, we would know red anyways is R all FF, that's the maximum of R. We could do it that way, or whatever, right? Just try to get that pretty close to red. There we go. So there's red. And I think that was all I needed to do. Yeah. Okay. So those are kind of the ideas in terms of laying things out. You might want to spend a little bit of time. There's lots of stuff you can do. And there's actually some pretty cool stuff you can do. The events. So this is what's triggered. So if you want, and I'll just sort of go a little bit and do something. So click on it, right? So when you're triggered, something will happen. So insert code. So just by doing that, I've got on here. So on event, there's the ID, right? So that's what I was saying. It's not click me as the ID, it's that button 1. And you might want to be a bit more specific. Type, so the type of interaction, okay? And you can click on here for examples if you want to see what other types there are, because there are. Click, and then function event. This is sort of the callback. And if you don't do anything, basically it just sort of runs what's in here, right? The code that's in here. And so in order to print it out onto the screen, so we can't use that printf, we're doing this console.log, and it just says button 1 click. So what we'll see is if we run here, okay, and we click on click me, then we get this in the console. So down here is the console. I think you can sort of put in a few things to watch as you want, if you've got variables and so on. That's a bit new to me. I think they've added that, but very, very close to that. Okay, that's what's going on in this case. So obviously if I click more than once, it keeps printing that to the console there. Okay, this turtle in the hair, you can speed up or slow down the response. So if you're trying to go through the program watching it, you might want to slow it down. Maybe not so much useful here. This little guy here, you might be asking, why does it say turtle? We didn't do this. There was a turtle graphics section where you could move the turtle forward and so on. Some of you have done that with me in Python, where we could move the turtle around and draw some interesting graphics there. All right. So I think, in terms of you working through it, it's not much point in me yapping away here and doing it. You can do it yourself. There are a few little videos there. I will go back though quickly and just talk a little bit about the multi-screen apps, again, it's going to be pretty easy. You can add screens, okay, and again, I will step you through that. And if you need extra help, let me know. But I'll help you out there. I think you'll be able to get it as you work your way through, because you guys all have a pretty solid programming foundation, and this is just going to be adding little things on. A little bit about debugging here, right? That's obviously finding errors. So, right, we've seen that errors come up, right? It is normal, right? And especially when you're doing a new language, right? You're going to have those little syntax errors and stuff. Dragging and dropping those blocks are going to make it a bit easier. But This, I think, if you know 99 little bugs in your code, right? 99 little bugs in your code, take one down, patch it around, 127 little bugs in your code, right? Sometimes you fix one, it gets worse, right? As you're working through this, oops, sorry, this thing moves so quickly. I don't know why this does that. I'm just going to go ahead and, there we go. Right, debugging is a typical step, right? Just get into the pattern, right? Don't take off, don't do too much, right? Write a little code, test to make sure it works, fix it, then add the next piece, right? And really, you're not going to have that problem because it's going to step you through that step by step. Types of errors, right? And we've talked pretty well about these. Syntax errors. These are things that are going to come up a little bit more at the beginning, right? You just spell things wrong, you put the wrong command in. Semantic errors, okay, errors due to improper use of program statements. So again, the code's right, written right, but it doesn't really work the way you've sort of intended. And then logical errors when, things are just not going the right way. In terms of you're supposed to be removing lives and you're adding lives or whatever the case is, okay? And basically the code doesn't work as it should. A couple little things there. Compile time errors. You don't really notice the compiling, okay? Those are the ones, though, that we saw a lot in C when we would, we'd compile the code and it would give us the error before we could even run it. So those are your compiler errors. So those are errors that will prevent your program from running. And those runtime errors, right? Those are your program compiles fine, but it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, right? So you have to play test it. You have to use it, debug, see if it's going to work the way you expect it to work. And if it doesn't, you need to go back. These, obviously, runtime errors are a lot more insidious, right, than compile time errors, because you've got a problem when you got a compile time error. You do not know for sure when you've got a runtime error, okay? And even if you do play test it, you're never 100% sure that you've tested everything. So playtesting is always an important aspect to it. Anyways, I don't want to talk too much more because I want, like I said, it's for you to sort of work through here. Like I said, don't worry that there's so many steps. They're pretty quick steps, okay? And as you get used to it, it will get faster and faster. So like I said, this is sort of buttons and events there. Let's see if I can go back. Okay, one more there. And then the next one that I'd like you to do this week at least, so get through those, okay? I'd say that's probably going to take you sort of like a 40 minutes, 50 minutes probably. There is a little game there, pretty simple to do, so it's kind of a fun little game. And the second one's not nearly as long, okay, but it's just talking about how would you do multiple screens. And I believe, it just builds on that chaser game. So instead of just having the one screen, now you've got an intro and maybe an end screen, okay? So that's all it is. It's just building on that. And there's a little bit about debugging. Okay, so hopefully that's not too bad, and good luck with it. And let me know if you need some help, because I can chat with you live. We can work things out that way. We can share screens, I think. So just let me know if you've got a problem, and I'll do my best to help you out. Okay, so try to get through lesson 1 and 2 this week. All right, talk to you later. Good luck with that.